She stood there like a statue, sunlight cutting across her platinum blonde hair, casting a glow that made her look almost surreal. Across the room, the voice of Ms. Doris, a woman who had been the rock of the Carter household for over 20 years, cracked through the air like thunder. "Mr. Carter, she's drugging those babies. That woman is dangerous." The words hit like a slap. Elijah Carter, a self-made tech mogul and a widower still haunted by the sudden death of his wife, froze in place. His gaze shifted from Doris, his lifelong housekeeper and confidant, to the new nanny, the woman who'd somehow gotten his twin daughters to sleep through the night after 6 months of relentless nightmares. 6 months of screaming, tears, panic attacks, gone. In just 2 days. Maddie Brooks didn't flinch, didn't blink. Her hands were clasped in front of her, calm, composed, too composed. Doris pointed a shaking finger. "No normal woman walks in here and fixes what therapists, doctors, and 5 nannies couldn't. That ain't normal. That's manipulation." Elijah's mind raced. What was happening here? The twins, Harper and Halle, were outside right now, giggling for the first time since their mother's car exploded on a rainy freeway just outside Asheville. They were running through the garden barefoot, their laughter piercing the silence that had haunted this house. And somehow, it all started the moment this woman showed up. A woman with no traditional references. A woman who looked like she belonged in a Hollywood magazine, not a nursery. A woman who asked for no money up front, no signed contract, just the chance to help. Now Doris, his most trusted voice, was telling him she was dangerous? Maddie reached into her purse and pulled out a small flash drive. Her voice was low, steady. "If you're going to accuse me, Mr. Carter, then you better watch this first." She handed it to him. The room fell completely silent. What was on that drive would change everything. To understand how things got to this moment, you have to understand the man behind the silence. Elijah Carter wasn't born into wealth. He didn't inherit land, legacy, or connections. What he had was grit, and a brain built for solving complex problems. By the time he was 35, Elijah had turned a $10,000 loan into one of the fastest-growing tech education startups in the country. His company, Carter Ed, helped thousands of underserved kids access coding boot camps and AI literacy programs from their own neighborhoods. He made his millions teaching others how to build futures. But while his name sat on Forbes lists and business magazines, Elijah himself kept a low profile. He didn't flaunt, didn't party. He lived in a quiet estate outside Asheville, North Carolina, tucked into the hills where the trees whispered more than the people did. His world revolved around 3 things: work, integrity, and most of all, his family. That world shattered the night his wife, Tasha, died in a fiery crash on I-26. She was driving their 4-year-old daughters, Harper and Halle, home from preschool when a semi-truck lost control. Tasha didn't survive. The girls did, but only physically. Emotionally, they shut down. They wouldn't speak, wouldn't sleep. Every night, the house filled with screams no lullaby could soothe. Elijah tried everything: therapists, trauma counselors, night nurses. 5 nannies came and went in less than 2 months. Some left crying. Others just never came back. The Carter house, once full of warmth and music, became cold, haunted by absence. The girls wouldn't even let Elijah hold them. That's when Ms. Doris, the family's longtime housekeeper and surrogate grandmother, stepped in. She ran the house with military precision, had served 3 generations of Carters, and was fiercely loyal to Elijah. But even Doris, with all her strength and no-nonsense charm, couldn't fix this. So when Dr. Cohen, the girl's trauma therapist, recommended an unconventional solution, a woman named Madeline Brooks, Elijah was skeptical. He didn't want more false hope. Madeline was different. She arrived at dusk in a second-hand Jeep, her platinum hair catching the last rays of sun like silver thread. She looked nothing like a nanny. More like a model or maybe a runaway bride from a Southern Gothic novel. But what truly stood out wasn't her appearance. It was her stillness. She didn't try too hard. Didn't talk too much. She just knelt down, looked Harper and Halle in the eyes and said, "I heard your dreams are too loud to sleep through. Want to build a quiet one together?" The twins didn't cry. That first night they slept 6 hours straight. By the 3rd night they were sleeping 8. Elijah was stunned. Doris was suspicious. The peace felt unnatural. Too fast. Too easy. But behind Maddie's calm presence, there was something else. Something no one could quite name. Not yet. The first time Madeline Brooks walked into the Carter house, everything went quiet. Not just the sounds, the energy. The kind of quiet that makes you lean in. Listen closer. It was a late Tuesday afternoon when she arrived. The sky outside was a soft Carolina blue, and the sun had just begun its slow descent behind the oak trees. Miss Doris opened the front door with her usual firm grip and sharp eyes, prepared to greet another stranger who wouldn't last a week. But what stood there was not what she expected. Maddie wore a simple navy cardigan, faded jeans, and flats. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back loosely, not in an effort to impress, but as if she didn't need to try. She carried no designer purse, no file folder of credentials, just a well-worn canvas tote and a calmness that immediately filled the foyer. "Elijah Carter," he said, extending his hand. She smiled. "Madeline Brooks. But the twins can call me Maddie." He noticed right away, her handshake wasn't firm or weak. It was steady, measured, like everything about her. But it wasn't Maddie that made the air shift. It was Harper and Halle. They had been watching from the top of the stairs, their small faces peeking through the banister like tiny ghosts. Normally when a new nanny walked in, they'd run and hide or burst into tears. But not this time. Harper stepped down first, one cautious foot at a time. Halle followed. And then something strange happened. Maddie didn't rush to greet them. Didn't squat down like most adults do to look friendly. She just turned slightly and whispered, not to them but as if she were sharing a secret with the air. "You two ever build a dream castle with marshmallow walls and starlight windows?" The girls didn't say a word, but they kept walking. Down the stairs. Toward her. And when they stopped just a few feet away, Maddie slowly reached into her tote bag and pulled out 2 tiny notebooks, handmade, filled with blank pages and glitter stickers. "These are for your dreams," she said. "Only the ones that help you sleep." Harper took hers without hesitation. Halle looked at her sister, then grabbed the other. It wasn't magic, but it felt like it. From the kitchen, Doris watched, lips tight. Her instincts screamed this was all wrong, too smooth, too fast, too good. But Elijah? He just stood there stunned. Because for the first time in months, the girls weren't crying. They were curious. That first night, something happened that hadn't happened in over 6 months. Silence. No crying. No frantic footsteps down the hall. No blood-curdling screams echoing through the Carter estate at 2 a.m. Just silence. And sleep. Elijah sat up in bed at 6:30 the next morning, confused. He checked his phone, expecting a dozen missed calls or texts from Maddie, but there was nothing. Just a quiet notification from his security system. Front door closed, 8:13 p.m. All secure. He rushed down the hall. The twins' bedroom door was cracked open. He peeked inside. There they were, Harper and Halle, curled up in their twin beds, stuffed animals tucked under each arm, still breathing softly under the pale pink covers. Maddie sat quietly in the corner chair, legs crossed, reading a thick paperback titled "The Body Keeps the Score." She looked up and smiled. "They stirred once around midnight," she whispered. "Halle had a shadow dream. We practiced the breathing again and she went right back to sleep." Elijah didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Night 2, same result. Night 3, even better, 8 straight hours, no interruptions. By day 5 the twins were laughing, drawing, eating full meals. They started singing in the garden again, songs Tasha used to hum while brushing their hair. It was as if someone had flipped a switch. And not just for the girls. Elijah himself started sleeping again. He took morning calls with more energy. He even pulled his guitar from storage, something he hadn't touched since the accident. But with healing, came suspicion. Especially from Ms. Doris. To her, things were moving too fast. Too smooth. She'd seen miracles before, but not without consequences. And not from someone like Maddie. A white girl, barely 27, no family references, no formal nanny agency. Just a name on a slip of paper from Dr. Cohen, and a strange calmness that never cracked. Doris started watching more closely. She noted the herbs Maddie used in the tea: chamomile, lavender, valerian root. All legal. All natural. But still, unfamiliar. She checked the twins' beds for pills. Checked the trash. Checked Maddie's room. Nothing. But her instincts whispered, something wasn't right. "She's got those babies in some kind of spell," she told Elijah one night after dinner. "Kids don't bounce back like that. Not from what they've been through." Elijah listened, but he wasn't convinced. He had seen the darkness in his daughter's eyes for months. Now he saw light. Still, deep down, a seed had been planted. And Maddie? She knew it was only a matter of time before someone started asking questions. She was ready. It happened on a Sunday morning. The kind where the sun filters through the trees just right, casting golden beams across the breakfast table. Harper was giggling over her pancakes. Halle had maple syrup on her nose. Maddie was helping them cut banana slices into star shapes, humming an old folk tune under her breath. Everything felt peaceful. Too peaceful for some. Miss Doris stood by the kitchen counter, arms crossed, eyes locked on the scene unfolding before her. She had been watching, listening, waiting. And now, the storm she'd been brewing inside had finally reached the point of no return. "Elijah," she said, her voice loud enough to slice through the warmth of the room. The laughter stopped. "I need a word. Now." He looked up, startled. "Can it wait until after breakfast?" "No," she said sharply. "It can't." Reluctantly, Elijah followed her into the front hallway. The moment they were out of earshot, she turned on him, eyes blazing. "She's drugging the children." The words dropped like a brick. Elijah blinked. "Excuse me? Don't play dumb. You know good and well kids don't go from screaming every night to sleeping like saints unless something unnatural is going on. You're accusing Maddie of what exactly?" "I've seen it before," Doris said, lowering her voice. "People who smile too much. Who seem too calm. She's putting something in their tea or maybe worse. Look at her. She's always quiet, always watching. That's not normal." Elijah rubbed his temples, already feeling the headache settle in. "Doris, they're sleeping because they feel safe. They're sleeping because they're sedated. That's a serious accusation." "I'm serious," she snapped. "And you need to open your eyes. You've let this woman into your home, into your children's minds, and you don't even know who she is." He stared at her, torn. Everything in him wanted to defend Maddie. The results were undeniable. His daughters were healing. He was healing. But he also knew Doris. She didn't throw around words like this lightly. That night, after the girls were tucked in and the house was quiet, Elijah asked Maddie to join him in the study. She walked in calmly, sensing something had shifted. "I need to ask you something," he said. She nodded. "Go ahead." "Doris thinks you're drugging the girls." There it was. The accusation. Maddie didn't flinch. She didn't even look surprised. Instead, she reached into her tote bag, pulled out a flash drive and set it gently on the coffee table. "I thought this might come up," she said softly. And just like that, the tide began to turn. Elijah held the flash drive in his hand, its plastic edges suddenly feeling heavier than they should have. Maddie didn't say anything more. She just stood there, composed, watching him with the kind of patience that made him feel like he was the one under the microscope. Without another word, he walked to his laptop, plugged the drive in, and opened the single video file inside. The screen lit up. The footage was grainy, clearly from a discreetly mounted night vision camera in the twins' bedroom. The timestamp read 2:12 a.m., 3 nights ago. The twins were tossing and turning. Harper let out a whimper, her tiny hands gripping the blanket like it was the edge of a cliff. Halle sat upright, breathing fast, eyes wide open in the dark. Then the bedroom door opened slowly. Maddie stepped in, no panic, no rush. Just calm. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't speak. She walked straight to Harper's bed and sat on the floor beside her. Gently, she placed her hand on the girl's back and started humming a low, soothing melody. Then she whispered, softly, almost like a prayer. "You're not falling. You're flying. Mama's arms are still here, wrapped around your dreams." Harper's breath slowed. Her hands relaxed. Halle climbed out of bed and walked to Maddie, resting her head on her shoulder. Still no lights. No pills. No tea. Just presence. Maddie guided both girls through a slow breathing routine, counting stars on their fingers, tapping gently on their knees like a rhythm game. Within minutes, the twins were asleep again, their faces peaceful. The footage cut to black. Elijah didn't speak for a long time. Maddie broke the silence first. "I set up the camera the day I arrived," she said. "With your approval, technically. It was in my onboarding note to document therapeutic progress. You signed it." He remembered. Barely. At the time, he hadn't even looked, just wanted someone to take the job. She continued. "I don't drug children, Mr. Carter. I understand them. That's the difference." He leaned back in his chair, staring at the now dark screen. The guilt hit him harder than Doris's accusation ever did. Because he had doubted her, if only for a second. And that second had cost him trust. "Why didn't you just tell me?" he finally asked. She looked at him, her voice soft but clear. "Because some truths carry more weight when you see them for yourself." And now he had. After the video, something shifted between them. Elijah couldn't sleep that night. Not because of fear or worry, but because of curiosity. Questions kept circling in his head like moths around a porch light. Who was Madeline Brooks? Why did she come here? Why, with her calm precision and almost clinical understanding of trauma, Was she working as a nanny in a grieving household instead of running a practice or teaching at a university? The next morning, Elijah did what any tech founder would do. He researched. Not the surface-level background check his assistant had done. No, this was deeper. And what he found didn't surprise him as much as it humbled him. Madeline Elizabeth Brooks. Bachelor's in Child Development from the University of Chicago. Master's in Behavioral Psychology from Columbia. Specialized certifications in trauma-informed care, sensory regulation therapy, and advanced cognitive behavioral methods for early childhood. At age 24, she had founded a private child therapy practice in Charlotte. And discreet. Catered to children of politicians, celebrities, and corporate elites dealing with grief, anxiety, or abuse. She was a rising star in pediatric psychology. Until 2 years ago. A malpractice suit involving a high-profile family rocked the clinic. The parents accused her of emotional manipulation after she encouraged a child to disclose abuse from a family member. No charges were filed. No license revoked. But the whispers were enough. Her practice shut down within 3 months. She disappeared from headlines. And now here she was, sitting in his sunroom, sipping chamomile tea while Harper braided her hair and Halle read a picture book out loud. Elijah approached her later that afternoon, the sunlight pouring through the windows like liquid gold. "You ever think about running your own clinic again?" he asked casually. Maddie smiled faintly, eyes not leaving the page Halle was pointing at. "I think about a lot of things," she said. "But for now, I'm exactly where I need to be." He nodded. She looked at him and her expression shifted, just slightly. "I didn't come here by accident, Elijah," she said, voice low. "I came here because I knew what this house needed. And because I needed it too." He studied her face, beautiful, sure. But beyond that there was something weightier. A depth that couldn't be learned in books. "You knew about the accident?" "I followed the story. 2 little girls. A widower no one could reach. It wasn't pity that brought me. It was purpose." For the first time in a long time, Elijah didn't feel alone in his grief. Because the woman in front of him? She wasn't just helping his daughters heal. She was rebuilding herself in the process. It didn't take long for the tension to finally break. 4 days, Maddie and Doris had danced around each other like polite strangers locked in a quiet war. Small jabs hidden behind formal greetings, silent glances exchanged like daggers over the kitchen counter. But the peace couldn't last forever. It was Wednesday afternoon, just after the twins had gone down for their nap. The house was still, the kind of stillness that usually came before a summer storm. Maddie was folding laundry in the mudroom, humming faintly under her breath, when Doris walked in. She closed the door behind her, firmly. No noise but definite intention. "We need to talk," Doris said, arms crossed, back straight like a general in uniform. Maddie didn't look up. "We're talking. I know who you are." Maddie paused. "I know you were sued. That fancy clinic you opened? Shut down. And now you're here, playing Mary Poppins in a house full of grief." Maddie kept folding, slow and methodical. "You think this is a game?" Doris pushed. "You come in here with your perfect hair and pretty face and these kids suddenly start sleeping, smiling? That's not therapy. That's theater." Finally, Maddie set the shirt down. "You think I don't know what people whisper when I walk into a room?" she said quietly. "That I don't feel the judgment before anyone even opens their mouth?" Doris blinked. "I know what you think of me. That I'm too polished. Too white. Too everything this family shouldn't trust." Doris opened her mouth, but Maddie cut her off. "You don't have to like me. But don't question why I'm here. Those girls? I know what they see when they close their eyes. I've seen it before, in kids with bruises no one talks about, in kids who flinch at the sound of car horns." Her voice softened. "And I know what it's like to walk into a home where people pretend nothing's broken just to keep everything looking whole." Doris's jaw tightened. "This family doesn't need someone who reminds them of what they lost," Maddie continued. "They need someone who can show them what they still have." There was a long pause. And then Doris stepped closer. "You talk real nice," she said. "But I've seen people like you come and go. They always want something." Maddie stared straight into her eyes. "I already got what I came for," she said. "Peace. For them. And maybe a little for myself." Doris didn't respond. She just turned and walked out. But for the first time, she didn't slam the door. It wasn't supposed to come out like this. Not yet. But sometimes the truth finds its way out, quietly, unexpectedly, like a letter that's been sitting in the back of a drawer too long. Elijah was in his home office, going over some investor reports, when he heard a soft knock on the door. It wasn't Maddie. It was Harper. She held something in her hand, a photograph, slightly wrinkled, torn at one corner. "Where'd you get that, sweetheart?" Elijah asked gently. Harper pointed upstairs. "In Maddie's book. The one with the green ribbon." He took the photo, brow furrowing. It was a group shot, taken at the Children's Hospital in Charlotte. There was Maddie, looking younger, wearing a white coat, standing with a few nurses and a little girl sitting on her lap. That little girl was Halle. Elijah felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just a coincidence. Later that night, after the girls had gone to sleep, he waited for Maddie in the living room. She came down, wearing a hoodie and leggings, her hair pulled into a messy bun. Casual. But she knew what was coming. He held up the photo. "You knew them," he said softly. She didn't deny it. "Yes," she replied. "I did. You met them before you ever walked through that front door." She nodded. Halle was admitted for a night. Panic attacks. Night terrors. It was the night after the funeral. They thought she might hurt herself, kept clawing at her own skin. Elijah's breath caught. "I was consulting at the hospital. I sat with her for 2 hours until she fell asleep." "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Because I didn't come here to leverage a moment. I came because I couldn't stop thinking about them. 2 little girls carrying grief too heavy for their age. And a father doing everything he could but still drowning." Elijah sat down slowly. "You applied to the job after that?" "No," she said. "I didn't apply. I asked Dr. Cohen to refer me anonymously. I didn't want a resume to get me in. I wanted to earn my way in." He stared at her, silent. Maddie took a step closer. "I wasn't sent by anyone. I chose to be here. I chose them." It wasn't just about professionalism anymore. It never was. It was personal. Because healing, real healing, doesn't always walk in with a name tag and perfect credentials. Sometimes, it walks in with intention. And stays. Elijah had always trusted Ms. Doris. She had been with the Carter family for over 2 decades. She raised him when his own parents were too busy building the empire he would eventually inherit. She cooked his first meals, bandaged scraped knees, told bedtime stories when the house got too quiet. But trust, like old wallpaper, can start to peel when you look too closely. It started with a phone call. After Maddie's quiet revelation about her connection to the girls, Elijah decided to review everything. Every resume, every reference, every conversation that had happened before Maddie arrived. That's when he noticed something strange. 6 nannies had applied before Maddie. 6 interviews had been canceled. By Doris. Each one with a vague excuse. Not a good fit. Didn't match the family's energy. She seemed off. All women with proper credentials. All women of color. All dismissed before Elijah ever met them. So he asked his assistant to dig deeper. They cross-referenced Doris's email history, her calendar access, even her text messages on the company phone. And that's when the truth surfaced. Doris had been screening every candidate. Not just for safety or professionalism, but for appearance, background, and in some cases, skin tone. She'd been acting as a silent filter, making sure only certain people made it through. One email stood out. Sent to a nanny agency. "The Carters are a traditional family. Please ensure candidates are appropriately cultured and not too progressive." Elijah sat at his desk, stunned. It wasn't just about keeping the house running. It was about control. That evening he called Doris into the study. She came in with her usual authority, apron still on, wiping her hands with a towel like she owned the place. "You wanted to see me?" He nodded. "Sit down." He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. He simply opened the folder. Read the emails aloud. One by one. At first she was quiet. Then defensive. "I was protecting this family." "No," Elijah said firmly. "You were protecting your idea of what this family should look like." She opened her mouth to argue, but he held up a hand. "I trusted you with my children. With my household. And instead you made choices that were never yours to make." Silence. For the first time in 20 years, Doris looked unsure of herself. Not angry. Not indignant. Just small. "You may have helped raise me," Elijah said. "But that doesn't give you the right to decide who deserves to help raise my daughters." She stood slowly. There were no tears. Just the quiet sound of a legacy unraveling. And with it, a hard truth. Sometimes, the people who guard the gate are the very ones keeping healing locked out. The house felt different the next morning. Lighter. Not because of some sudden miracle or overnight redemption, but because the weight of unspoken truths had finally been set down. Ms. Doris had packed her things and left just before dawn. No dramatic farewell. No apology. Just a quiet exit from a chapter that had lasted longer than most marriages. Elijah stood in the kitchen alone, coffee in hand, watching the sun spill across the hardwood floors like melted gold. The girls came in still sleepy-eyed, their blankets dragging behind them like shadows. Maddie followed close behind, no makeup, hair pulled back in a loose braid, her presence as steady as ever. "Morning, Daddy," Harper mumbled, climbing onto the stool. Halle pointed to the fridge. "Can we have waffles today?" Elijah smiled, really smiled, for the first time in what felt like years. "Waffles coming right up." They sat together at the table, the four of them. A family not by blood or tradition but by choice. By survival. By healing. Later that day Elijah made 2 calls. The first was to Dr. Cohen. "I want to set up a long-term partnership," Elijah said. "Trauma care for kids, especially underserved communities. We'll fund a center, name it after my girls." The doctor agreed without hesitation. The second call was to Maddie. She was upstairs, reading with the twins when her phone rang. She answered it without looking. "Elijah?" He cleared his throat. "Come downstairs when you get a second." When she did, he was waiting in the living room with a folder in hand and a hesitant smile on his face. "I know this wasn't what you came here for," he began, "but I want to offer you something." He opened the folder. Inside, an official proposal. Director of Pediatric Healing Initiatives. A role within the Carter Foundation. Full creative control. Full support. Maddie stared at the offer, speechless. "I'm not asking you to stop being who you are," Elijah said. "I'm asking you to be more of it. Not just for Harper and Halle. For every child who never got the chance to be understood the way you've understood them." She looked up, her eyes glassy but not from sadness. From relief. From purpose. "I'll accept," she said. "But only on one condition." "What's that?" "That I still get to read bedtime stories. And make waffles on weekends." Elijah laughed. "Deal." It wasn't just a professional move. It was a declaration. A line in the sand. That this family, this house, would never again choose silence over truth, comfort over courage, or legacy over love. Healing doesn't always arrive the way you expect it. It doesn't wear a lab coat, carry a clipboard, or come with a glowing resume. Sometimes healing walks through your door quietly. With a canvas tote. A broken past. And the kind of eyes that see right through the mess without flinching. For Elijah Carter, healing didn't come from money, status, or power. It didn't come from control. It came from letting go. Letting go of what he thought a family should look like. Letting go of the roles people had played for so long, simply because they'd always been there. Letting go of fear. The fear of trusting someone again, the fear of change, the fear of being judged for needing help. Maddie didn't just help Harper and Halle sleep. She helped Elijah wake up. Wake up to what it means to protect not just a legacy, but the people who carry it. Wake up to the idea that tradition is only sacred if it serves love. And that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is listen. Really listen. To the quiet ones. The steady ones. The ones who don't demand attention but deserve it. Because truthfully, people like Maddie walk among us every day. They don't ask for praise. They don't seek credit. They just do the work, softly, persistently, beautifully. And the world changes one child at a time. One family at a time. So if you're listening to this story right now, ask yourself, who have you written off too quickly? Who have you judged because of where they came from, or didn't? What doors have you kept closed because of someone else's opinion? And more importantly, what healing could walk in if you finally open them? Sometimes, love looks like bedtime stories and waffles. Other times, it looks like accountability, hard conversations, and choosing what's right over what's comfortable. But always, it looks like courage. If this story moved you even just a little, do one thing. Comment courage below. Because that's what it took for Maddie to walk into that house. What it took for Elijah to unlearn years of silence. And what it takes for all of us to choose growth over fear. Subscribe to the channel if you believe stories like this matter. Share this with someone who needs a reminder. The right person at the right time can change everything. And sometimes that person is you.